Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew, and tonight I'd like to welcome back to the show author, researcher, and creator of the website YOWUSA.com, Marshall Masters. How you doing tonight, Marshall?
Okay, Chris, good to be back.
Oh,
and always fun to be on with you. You're a wild and crazy guy.
Very good. Well, we got a lot to talk about tonight, and there's so much that has happened since the last time we talked. The Earth is changing. I mean, there is a lot going on. I have a list here of some of the Earth changes that are going on, and I thought we could go through a few of those things. Starting with the earthquake.
Is this a 10-hour interview?
Not quite, but we'll fit in what we can. We'll fit in what we can. You're right. There is a lot going on. Yeah. So starting with earthquakes and volcanoes. Right after that huge magnitude 8.0 hit Fiji, that really deep one, it seems like there was just a string of large earthquakes after that one.
Oh, if you go to my website, you look at my signs articles. Actually, I can go to my website and I can show you some of this stuff as I'm talking about it.
Yeah.
And my website is YOWUSA.com.
And I'll have the link up in our description as well.
And what I'm going to do is talk to you. I love Zoom. I use Zoom a lot. It's like,
oh yeah, Zoom is great.
Yeah, ever since Microsoft bought Skype, it was, that's what Microsoft always does, buy something great and then mess it up. And that's what they do. So let me go and I'm going to do a share and I'm going to set it to this browser window.
Yeah.
All right. And bear with me. Now, I'm going to, this is my Science 27 article. Not too long ago, August 15th, we put it up from worst to worst. Okay. And when we're looking at we measure fireballs and earthquakes. Now, fireballs, as you can see here, and by the way, all of these stats go back to 2015. If you go all the way back 20 years, it's like next to nothing. I mean, it would be down a little blip above zero. Everything after December 21, 2012 just went ballistic. But here we are in July. As that green line is 2018, as you can see, this is the highest recorded month for total fireballs since the beginning of the data set, which is January 1997.
Right.
And then we don't have data from before that, so it's the highest ever. Now, that is total fireballs. Let's go down to earthquakes. This is the one that is the freaky.
Yeah, I would say so.
I mean, totally freakozoid. All right. Gosh, I hope I didn't offend somebody's sensibilities with that. We're in such a sensitive state. Huh?
You probably did, but
Yeah. I mean, it's the thought police will knock at the door. I'm serious too.
Oh, yeah,
I see that. We're going to a Chinese-style internet. Thank you, Google and Apple, for eating the bitter fruit. But as you can see down here, this is actually starts with a light yellow. You can see January of 1997, 1,175. If we go to the July of 1997, 1,276 total earthquakes around the world in that month, in July. Now go down to July of this year, 27,986.
Yeah,
does that give you an idea of what's happening? Now, the reason why we do earthquakes of all magnitude is that And this puts it right here. This is July 2018, earthquakes of all magnitudes. Historically, never a higher month in the history of 300 years of recording earthquakes.
Right. And many of those are just in Hawaii, correct?
There are many of those are in Hawaii, but it was also, there were from other areas as well.
Yeah.
June is where we saw more, a heavy measure from Hawaii. So if you want to, you could say the big difference here between June and July is we have Hawaii plus a bunch of other things that are popping off. So, do you say, well, if a lot of it's coming from Hawaii, we're going to write it off? What? Is this accounting for the IRS? You're going to, charge off some of your earthquakes because it doesn't fit your voice model or whatever you want to say to the world? Ridiculous. Look at that. Look at how heavy, how high that is. My God. All right. Never saw anything. I've been doing this since 1999. I have never seen numbers like this. Never, never, never. So, folks, you can go to my website, yowusa.com, or go to marshallmasters.com, and it's signs 27 from worse to worser. Okay? So I'm going to stop the share. Also, I do want to mention there is another one. I do want to talk with you. I put up phase 2 has begun. And here I'm explaining actually what I'm doing right now and where I'm going with my work. And those are 2 articles that folks might want to see.
Definitely. Yeah.
But anyway, you had some questions.
Oh, yeah. So not only with the earthquakes, but I mean, that just in the past month, it seems like we've had the big ones are really popping off this month.
Oh, yeah.
And not only that, we have the volcanic activity.
Right.
Usually there's used to be a while ago, there would be maybe 10 to 20 average volcanoes erupting on a daily basis. We've been in the 30 to 40 range for a couple of years now.
Go back a little earlier when I started doing this. In the course of a year, back in 2000, we would have 40 active volcanoes throughout the entire year, staggered out. You'd have a few here and there every month. Right. We have 40 concurrent right now. So what we would have for total activity in a year, it's a month. It's huge. It's absolutely huge.
Yeah. And not only that, some of the other changes that we're experiencing this year, some of the new changes, is the heat. We're experiencing record-breaking heat across the world. Temperatures that some areas have never seen before.
Yeah, it makes you want to, watch Robin Williams and Good Morning Vietnam. Good morning, Vietnam. It's hot. It's hot. That whole routine he does about it. It's hot, and makes your underwear melt. Yeah, I mean, people are having a lot of heat. Europe, whoa, they have really gotten hammered. A lot of droughts. You have a lot of crop failures. It's causing a lot of problems. I can see this year in the winter, food prices are going to go up. We've seen a little bit of that already. We're going to see more of it goes on. So all of this, the atmospherics are being heavily affected. And that really dovetails into the whole conversation around chemtrailing.
Yeah, and I do want to get into that, but I also want to talk about some of the other changes that we're seeing. Now, going along with the volcanic and earthquake activity, I think this is kind of along the same lines. We're seeing a bunch of cracks and fissures open up around the world, and they're growing at an exponential rate. Would you agree?
Yes, I call it crustal undulation. And what's happening right now, it's interesting if you go to the pole shift prophecies of Edgar Cayce. And what Cayce said was that he had pegged the year 2000. And, Yoda from Star Wars was right. You know, the future is always in motion. We can affect it and change it, and other things can affect it and change it. And terrestrial trends can change. When you're doing what he was doing, it's like looking at the future through a garden hose. And so other people, you know, they want to dismiss it, so they criticized him. But what he said was that the core of the planet is where the forces are building of uneven heating of the magma in the core of the planet that is actually going to trigger the pole shift. Now, it was according to him. We have a situation where we have land tearing, which is very much a concern, sinkholes, a tremendous amount of, and it goes in cycles with earth trumpets. We're going to have more and more of those as we go along. Major earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, everything's being affected because the lithosphere of our planet, there's 4 spheres to our planet: the aquasphere, the atmosphere, the biosphere, and the lithosphere. And the lithosphere is, that's the crust of the planet we're standing on. Underneath that is the magma. Well, the magma is heating and cooling unevenly. It's been affected. And what's affecting it is not Planet X directly. What's happening is the sun is interacting with Planet X. And so the result of that is not where we're measuring it with sunspots and solar cycles. It's about luminosity. All right. Solar luminance is steadily on the increase. That is what's really driving everything. And it goes to the heart of asking, why are they chemtrailing? Because it's completely insane. The aluminum that they're spraying on us is going to, if they keep going at this pace, it's estimated by the year 2030, 50% of all children will be born autistic. 50%.
Wow.
That's how much we've been loaded up with this. So they're breathing the same air. They're having the same physical distress from all of what they're doing, and it's terrible. Chemtrailing is complex on many levels. It's like eating a natural onion. Every time you peel a layer, you just keep crying. And so it's like, stop peeling, you know, you're still going to keep crying. But the point is, why are they doing it? Because it makes no sense. It's doing so much damage. Well, it's not really about regulating the atmosphere so we can deal with global warming and all of that stuff. Here's what the elites know. Whether they were going to spray or not spray makes no difference in what's going to happen. What's going to happen during the coming Planet X flyby is we are going to get hammered. All right? And we're going, if you think we have warming issues now, it's going to be much worse. We're going to have heat waves and droughts like you've never seen. But the real thing, the concern for the elites and why they're doing all the chemtrail spraying is photons, the light, the luminosity of the sun, which is increasing, and it's, you know, it's in small amounts, but it doesn't take a lot to make a difference. And what they want to do is they're using the aluminum and the other chemicals that they're spraying, it's a witch's brew, to reflect the photons back out into space. What does that achieve? Well, photons carry radiation. And so you have all this light that is striking the planet. The radiation is going into the core of the planet, and that's what is exacerbating the effect, causality that Edgar Cayce warned us about. All right? And they're doing it now, not because it's going to make a difference now. It won't make any difference to what's happening now. It only makes life more difficult for us. Where the difference will come is 10 years from after the tribulation begins, and they come up from their deep underground bases 2 miles under. They have a huge network all over the country and all over the world for that matter. And they want to come up to a planet that has not been reduced to another Venus or a Mars. They want to come up to a planet that still has enough of its atmosphere, biosphere, aquasphere left that it's able to regenerate and fix itself. So by spraying now and reducing the amount of radiation going into the planet, which is exacerbating all of these things, it's hedging like, they do in the stock market. It's like buying options, all right? And that's what they're doing. That's what it really drives. They have a lot of other things. Their agendas are always complex.
And it seems like
that's the tail that wags the dog.
Yeah. And it seems like, not only that, they're trying to push this grand solar minimum to us. They're trying to, it seems that that's what their excuse is for what's going on now. Would you agree with that?
What you're asking me? When it comes to the elites and the leadership of the world and what they're telling us about what's happening, I kind of feel like an abused wife who hears her husband say, "Honey, I won't beat you to death anymore. Trust me, I won't do it again." Excuse me, I've been beaten. I think I'm not going to forget that. So you're asking me, well, should we trust them? What do you think? I think they're a pack of lying SOBs. That's what I think.
No, what I was asking is if you think that's what they're trying to get us to believe, that this is all because of the grand solar minimum.
They want us to die.
The stories about that now.
They want us to die.
Well, that's been up.
That's Agenda 21. They want us to die. And you know what? They've won. It's going to happen. Now, I have an article I put up, Phase 2 has begun, be prepared. Because Phase 1 for me is what I've been doing forever, which is what I call validation. Presenting evidence that Planet X exists and that it's creating grief for us. And the problem is the more proof, I'm finding the UFO effect has come into play. The more concrete proof and evidence you give, the more people stick their heads in the sand. They don't rise up to the knowledge. They veer away from it, stick their heads in the sand because they know not good, and they don't want to see not good. And this is something that is played into the hands of fear porn mongers and clickbait artists on YouTube. I've really, myself, I don't see the point of trying to work on validation because there is manipulation of the search engines. Anybody that's doing anything credible, and they're trying to be serious in their reporting, and they're trying to give people really good information, it's really easy to spot them. They don't get traffic. All right. The ones that get traffic are propaganda, government sites, wild-eyed debunkers, but the ones that really get the heavy traffic are the fear porn clickbait artists on YouTube. Now, they're really easy to spot. They're the ones that have that sexy-looking stuff. Ooh, wow, is that sexy? Everybody runs. Let's go see Sexy and Dangerous. And then at the end of Sexy and Dangerous, they say, hey, what do you think about it? Note it down in the comments. When they say, what do you think about it? What you're doing is you're spending your time with somebody who is a scumbag. All they want to do is make money. Clickbait, sexy, alarmist, smoke it up as hard as you can, get somebody in, because traffic equals AdSense revenue, ranking, search engines, so forth. And that's all they want. They're not trying to be responsible in what they're reporting. Responsibility is irrelevant. It's all about getting people in and getting them, filling them up full of fear porn and clickbait. I didn't want to, to me, it was like, well, if I'm going to continue doing my mission of validation, should I jump down into the gutter and duke it out with these rats of disinformation? Nah, let them keep the gutter. I got a better idea. I'm going to phase 2, which is preparedness. Unfortunately, that means a lot of my Planet X audience is not able to come along with me because they're really caught up in a very terrible situation. They don't see what I see. They don't see the daily reports. They don't see the videos. They don't see the stuff that I see that every day tells me something's coming. All right? Consistent patterns, people observing the same object in the sky in relationship to the sun for different kinds of smartphones and cameras at altitude, from the ground, in the east, in the west, and I keep seeing the same objects.
So
and they're fixed.
One of the things I wanted to ask you is if it would be visible, and apparently, there have been sightings, but there's been a lot of...
You want to see something?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
You want to see something that just came through today for me?
Yeah, of course.
I still have to do it, but I'm going to show you an example of, this is a raw submission, came in from the husband. I still have to vet it, and I still want to work with the wife. But the point is, I want to show you this because this is the one object I have been tracking for months and months and months and doing a lot of videos. Not that you're going to know, because I am suppressed. They have ghosted me on the search engines. What does ghosting mean? Ghosting means there's 2 ways a search engine finds you. Title of whatever you've published, and what nobody else can see is in the metadata section, the head of every web page, is your keywords. And the keywords like Planet X or Nibiru, and so you use that and it brings it up. Well, if you do Marshall Masters, you'll find me. You do Planet X or Nibiru, no. And you do any credible researcher, you're not going to find. Because we have been ghosted, which means we have our keywords, which is how we get new traffic. Titles are good for getting people who are already familiar with you and they're following your work. But newbies are going to come in through the keywords. Well, what they do with the search engines and when they ghost you is they delink your site from the keyword functions so that you never come up. You're not indexed. And it's across the board. It's just not Google. It's Bing, Yahoo. It's across the board, not with me and with other people.
Yeah,
because
suppressing the truth community in general, like not only this subject, but any subject that delves into topics that they don't want us to know about.
Exactly. So, here is a picture that I have here. All right. This woman took it from a jet, and we have an object there. Now, that object I have been tracking for a year with videos from all kinds of people. This is just another one catching the same object in the same location.
Very interesting.
It's interesting, but it's pointless. All right? It's not sexy woo-woo. Right, I don't present it like sexy woo-woo. People want, oh, give me scary. Give me scary. I want scary. I want meaningless stuff. That's what people, I'm sorry, but that's what they're going for. They want the garbage because they go home and their spouses are giving them grief. The spouses are going, it's nonsense. I don't want to hear about it. Never talk about it again. We'll never see anything. Friends and family are telling them they need to get a tinfoil hat. And then the worst part is then their spoiler, their spouses go total spoiler. And now they're, I'm so ashamed of you. I'm humiliated by you. And it goes on like this. So I'm not angry with people for doing it. I mean, they can't do anything that's in terms of preparedness. They can't go out and start doing the really constructive things you need to do to buffer yourself so you can get through this and get your family to safety. Because the minute they do anything constructive, hell is coming to visit clean out the guest room. It's going to be a long one. Okay. And so people that are watching, I mean, and the grandparents, oh my God, Chris, they're the ones I feel so sorry for. I've heard them crying on the phone so many times because they want to tell their grandchildren, but their children say, you talk about Planet X to the kids, I'm going to cut you off. You'll never see them again.
Yeah. And there's so much intentional disinformation put out there just for that purpose, to get people to shun the topic. As soon as they hear Planet X, nope, I'm not even going to hear it. It's just ridiculous topic. And
that's right.
That's intentional.
So it's really been, and this has been engineered. It's not something, remember, I started Yowza in 1999. All right. And I believe it was January of 2003. I did my first article on Planet X. I can remember for a long time when we were able to have an intelligent conversation on the web, and I could get a lot of traffic and people were following. There were no controls. Boy, the controls from 2 years ago, they started slamming the brakes on everything. I put out a video, and I know by around somewhere between 2,000 to 3,000 views, that's it. They choke it off. That's how they spot a video that's working. And what they look for is actually not the number of views. They look for the average amount of time people spend watching the video. If you have a video that has 10,000 views and they're all 20 seconds each, they don't care.
Right.
When you have a video that people are watching all the way through to the end, and when they see that happening, they see that much play time, boom, they kill it. And it's like you watch your videos just go up real fast, and then the minute their algorithm kicks in, pow, seizes up. You get, instead of getting 500 or 1,000 views a day, you get 25 or 50.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I've experienced the same thing myself.
Yeah. So, we have a Chinese style internet, and it's really sad. But that's just the way it is.
Yeah. Now, I'd like to talk about what we can expect maybe in the next coming months to years. If we have, however many years we have, what can we expect with the Earth changes? How far is this going to go? Obviously there will be a pole shift, but in the coming years, what can we expect?
Well, it's just, like I said, in my Signs 27, this is my 27th article in this series. We've been tracking these data sets. This is empirical data. You can take it to the bank. And when you look at what I showed you earlier, there should be a good, strong answer as to what's coming down the pike, because we're already seeing it. And we're going to go from worse to worse. Things are going to get worse. At some point, Nemesis, which is on the opposite side of the sun, is going to close with us. And once it reaches its point of perihelion, which is its closest point to the sun, and then comes over, it's going to arc around. When it comes around to the sun, Nemesis, when we see it, will probably be around the 2 or 3 o'clock position, probably closer to 2 o'clock position. And then it's going to pass over our heads and then go south. Now, when we're seeing it, we're going to have a point here where there's so much video footage of this being done. And also keep in mind, chemtrailing is obscuring I have a lot of people who are out making constant observations. And the minute they publish, they start, their area gets targeted for chemtrailing. Whoa, you go out, you put up a YouTube video, and you got a jet up there burning thousands of dollars worth of fuel and spraying chemicals just to mess up your sky. We're going to continue seeing more impact events. We're going to start seeing more volcanic events. I would say, to me, the bellwether that has been real consistent in dealing with people who are psychics is Vesuvius. When lava is pouring down the flanks of Vesuvius, big time, it's a big eruption, that's when we know we're in deep kimchi. At that point, it's going to just start getting much worse. And then when things really start to go, we're going to have major events that are going to hit us out of nowhere. When you look at Vesuvius, there's a huge supervolcano off the coast of Naples. I think Vesuvius could be part of that system. But if you look what's happening over here on our side of the world, Cascadia, the people that live in Seattle, they're in the middle of a misery sandwich because they got the Cascadia to the west, Mount Rainier, which is one big, huge volcano, to the east of them. If those go off at the same time, Seattle's a ghost town. So when things really start to pop, they're going to pop fast. And this is the reason why people need to start considering relocation. Now, I moved to Reno from San Jose, which was a good move. It got me out here, and part of it was that in Reno, I could get involved in federal programs to learn a lot of information about communications, two ways. I joined Aries. I also took hundreds of hours of classroom instructions through FEMA. Tremendous source of information. Yeah, the government at the top has, these are the useless eaters at the top. But you get down on the rank and file, these are people that care. They're good people. They're salt of the earth, and I love them. All right. And I got a lot of phenomenal information. So that's coming out in September. I'm doing Radio Free Earth. You'll see that on Amazon. And what I'm doing is trying to teach people how to use a combination of amateur radios and consumer two-way radios so that they can be in contact not only within their own community, but with people thousands of miles away that they can share valuable knowledge about how to survive. So this is my next stage. I'm really going to preparedness. And preparedness, the way FEMA does it now, is called all hazards, which I prefer. Rather than saying the Planet X tribulation, it's just preparedness for all hazards. And because that's what Planet X is going to do. It's going to create all the hazards. I'm only going to talk about one to kind of emphasize the impact it's going to have. But with all hazards, you could be sitting there dealing with an earthquake, then you have tornadoes, and you have fires. I mean, you could have multiple things hitting in an area at the same time, and coordinating your responders for something like that would be a nightmare. It's really going to be taxing for municipalities. But let's talk about that one thing, all right? Because we've talked about, earthquakes and this, and all of these things are bad. They all cause a lot of death and destruction. But let's talk about the collapse of the power grid.
Right.
All right.
Yeah, that's one thing that I would think it would be one of the most detrimental factors.
The truth of it is, back in the 80s, I believe it was in the 80s or 90s, Congress funded an EMP study, electromagnetic pulse risk study, and the congressionally funded group published their findings, and what they said was if the grid fails, 9 out of 10 Americans will die. This is according to our own government.
Yeah.
Our own Congress paid for this information. 9 out of 10 Americans will die if the grid collapses. People go, what do you mean? How do you say that? Okay, for those of you out there that are watching this, are you diabetic? You're dead. You're dead now. It's only a matter of how long it takes. Because once the grid goes down, baby, that's it. You know exactly how many days of life you got left. You got a child that's a type 1 diabetic, dead today. It's only a matter of time later. Now, and then you have pacemakers, dialysis, everybody that depends on technology.
I mean,
Because let's face it, without the grid, there is no modern medicine.
They rely on the medication, and if they've
Right.
had recent surgeries, or they just rely on medication to live, they won't have access to that.
That's right. Now, the reason why they're not going to have access to it is that the energy industry, if you want to see where is K Street, that's where the lobbyists are at. What single lobbyist action, is actually consuming more dollars than anything else, period. What's the one big one? What's the 800-pound gorilla in lobbying? The 800-pound gorilla for lobbyists on K Street is to make sure that Congress does not protect our power grid from electromagnetic pulse, whether that is created naturally or with an EMP weapon. Now, is it possible? Yes, the technology is here. Is it as expensive? The study funded by the government said, according to them, it was about $3 billion to protect the entire grid. So let's double it or triple it. Let's say it's $9 billion. For our government, what? This is chump change, all right? And, they're not going to spend the money because the energy companies, if there's EMP protection of the grid, that means the government's involved, and energy is principally a self-regulated industry. So they would rather have the vulnerability of an unprotected grid, which will kill 9 out of 10 Americans, than to have Congress actually legislate something that would get into their little bailiwick and save people. So
Right.
diabetic children aren't going to die. Okay? Now, the energy companies, and this is vicious on their part. It is totally self-serving. I guess they just figured, hey, if our grid goes down completely, that means our business dies, and if 9 out of 10 Americans die as a result, to hell with them. They're just useless eaters. Let's just kill them. And that's what the energy companies want to do. So next time you pay for your electricity, you're sending a check to somebody who has sentenced you or somebody you love to death. Okay? 9 out of 10, only one causality, EMP. Now, the other thing that happens is that triggers off a whole nother series of things. EMP shuts down. You don't think about it, but water will not come out of your tap in most places unless you have electricity.
Yeah.
To run the pumps. There's no electricity to run the pumps. Now you're out of water. You're out of water. You're out of the sewage. That's it. So what you have is a perfect third world disaster scenario where people are dying from communicable diseases left and right because sanitation has disappeared.
Yeah, and I'm sure people's mental state will decline very rapidly as well.
Oh, yeah, it'll get ugly. It'll get ugly. But then you also have the nuclear reactors. Now, our country, we have, I think, a little over 100 GE Type 1 reactors. These are very old nuclear reactors. They were first generation. GE Mark 1s are the ones that blew up at Fukushima. We have 3 reactors that went China syndrome. The cores have melted into the ground. And they're pumping radiation directly through underground rivers into the Pacific. Well, we're going to have Fukushimas all across the country. Now they'll say, well, we can scram the reactors. Yeah, they can. But it takes 2 years to cool down a GE Type 1 once it's been scrammed, which means you have to keep cool water pumping into that reactor. And the reactors they found the GE was a defective design from the get-go. And they did an update to it, which was cosmetic and ridiculous. The bottom line is the GEs will not contain. All right? Their lids will blow. Well, that means if you're 50 miles upwind or 100 miles downwind, you're in deep kimchi, friend. You're eating radiation. You're going to glow in the dark. And that means a lot of the, particularly in the east, is going to be very, very hard hit. There's going to be a lot of areas. So you have that. The other thing also is fracking fields. When we start having, for example, New Madrid goes off, major fault lines, the concrete casings in the fracking wells are designed to be to function under nominal normal conditions for 30 years. They'll fail left and right, and that means that witch's brew of stuff that they used to frack is going to start oozing up, and you're going to have water that'll burn and dead soil and all of that. So the fracking is going to be bad. The nuclear is going to be bad. And this is just from coming down from a few basic things, and we haven't even gotten to, we've only covered maybe a fourth of the causalities that will be hitting at the same time.
Right.
So when you're saying what's going to happen when it comes down and it starts getting unglued, it's how do you want to die? How do you want to die? You're going to decide this right now. You and everybody watching this video, you're going to decide how you die right now. Not then, you're deciding it now, because now's when you have the chance to do something. Relocate, get to a better area, prepare, learn skills, make your kids self-reliant. Think like a pioneer. You know, nowadays, anybody who's a prepper, give them tinfoil, give them tinfoil. They're crazy. Hey, you know, our country is what it is because there were a lot of people in the East who spent a whole year looking at the east end of a westbound oxen. And wherever they got, they would create root cellars and whatnot, and they always had 6 months of food on hand.
Yeah.
They could always weather things. They were always prepared in advance. They could deal with all hazards.
Well, it seems like they're also making sure the upcoming generations don't have those skills with everything they push through the new technologies, media, stuff like that. They're just making sure that our kids will not survive.
They're setting us up to survive. They want us to die in vast numbers because they have bunkers and caves and whatnot. They have vast, huge stockpiles of food.
Now, do you think those bunkers will hold up with everything that happens? Do you think they will actually hold?
Oh, they're gonna take some hits. Nothing ever goes according to plan.
Right.
But even if they take hits, what they're really banking on is by the time they come to the surface, maybe there's 250 million people left on the entire surface of the earth. Because if you have tons of bunkers and all kinds of stuff, and you're going to come up and say, hey, we want you to sign on the dotted line. You're going to take the chip. You're going to follow our rules. You're going to obey us. You're going to use our money and our currency, and it's a bad deal. Well, selling a bad deal to 7.5 billion people, which comes down to who really gets it and how fast does it evaporate, is not a huge incentive. But if the world's population has been reduced to 250 million, now that's a whole different ballgame. And at that point, those people are going to be hard pressed, and a bad deal is better than no deal at all. And they're going to convince themselves that they can, make this deal with the devil and wiggle out of it. There won't be any wiggle. All right. So what they're really gearing for is that with the spraying, they're hedging, so they come up to the surface of a planet that can restore itself, that the population has been so significantly decreased that they can get them to do a bad deal, to accept their rule and their leadership, which will be for countless generations to come. And we'll become a slave species. And so for me, it really boils down to the elites win if we don't have the chutzpah to call the bluff, because they're winning on a bluff. If enough people are to say to their enticements, no thank you, they will fail. Now, understand, you say no to the enticements. With the elites, always comes the carrot, then comes the stick. So you're not saying no to the offer, you're saying no to the stick, and the stick is going to swing and it's going to hurt. But if enough people are self-resilient and they can take care of themselves, and they're able to connect and talk to others, then there will be a strong impetus to preserve freedom, because this is the most important thing. Freedom is more important than life itself. And that's the reason why I did Radio Free Earth, because that's that two-way radio capability. It's based on analog RF, analog radio frequency, which is what Voice of America was all about during the Cold War. The Soviets couldn't stop them from broadcasting into Russia. They were highly effective. When I did business in Russia, I used to talk to Russians all the time about it. It was very inspirational. But the analog RF is the ticket. That's the thing. And people can talk to each other, because there's three things that's necessary in the long haul: self-sufficiency, knowledge, okay? And that's really important. Knowing you're not alone, and hope for the future. Those are the three things that you need. And so that was the reason why I've been working actually for the last 2 years on Radio Free Earth. It comes out next month. I'd love to come back in September and talk about it with you further.
Oh, definitely.
And but I'm also working on other stuff for the preparedness angle. And to be blunt, I'm a 65-year-old guy. Why should I give a damn? Well, I believe in reincarnation. So I would much rather reincarnate in the Star Trek future than come back and find we've turned into some Mad Max Anunnaki jerks, out there rampaging through the galaxy and rape, pillage, and burn, and other species are going, oh my God, here comes these hominids, Oh,
no, I agree. Yeah, I definitely wouldn't want that future. Now, do you think there'll be a point anytime in the near future where we will be told what is happening, where they will actually say, well, by the way, this is going to happen?
Why don't you start holding your breath and let's see how long that works?
Well, that's the kind of answer I figured you'd say. I mean, it's, even when...
What you're going to know is the lies.
What's that?
It's the lies. There's going to be two lies that are going to be important. The first lie is going to be everybody's seeing it, everybody's talking about it, and they're going to come out and say, no worries, it's not going to hit us, which is true. It will not hit us. It'll pass overhead. That's true. And it's already gotten as worse as it's going to be, and that's it. But then it is going to get much worse. And people are going to be going, hold on a second, you sold us a bill of goods. Now, when they come back the second time and they go, say something like, well, hey, sorry, folks, our models were based on, and so now we can tell you we do have a clear beat on what's going to happen, and it's going to be a rough ride excuse me, but everyone's going to get through it, so don't worry about it. And you'll go to Walmart all the way through this whole thing. And when you hear that kind of nonsense, that's when they're telling you, we just killed you. Okay? When you hear them saying, don't worry, we were wrong, but don't worry, what they're really saying is, we engineered your death, and you stupid mullets out there sucked it up as hard as you could because you didn't have the stomach for bad news, and now you're going to die badly. Ha, ha, ha. That's what they're really saying. Okay? So that's what's coming. Now, for me as a researcher and an author, and I see it coming, can I go out there and help everybody? As much as I, don't want to see what's going to happen to folks. I don't want to wish that upon anybody. But the reality is, 9 out of 10 people or more are going to die, and they're going to die because they were so busy being smart and not doing anything, wasting their time. The ones that do survive, you're not going to know where they are. You're not going to find them unless they want to be found. They're going to be quiet, and they're going to quietly survive. Those are the people that I'm trying to help and talk to. Those are the ones that are going to do it. Those are the ones that are going to make it through to what I call the backside, when we start seeing blue skies, tasting sweet waters, green grasses, the earth starts restoring itself. They'll be the ones that make it, the ones that are thinking about doing it now. Some of the others will make it as well, those that are unprepared. But largely, the ones that are going to drive the process most constructively for survival for the species are the people who are looking at what's going on now, and they take their own counsel. They go, I know what I know. I'm not going to let somebody else lure me away. I look at people in the Planet X genre I've been writing for years, and it breaks my heart because I see them, instead of, you can go on YouTube and there's phenomenal videos on all kinds of survival issues, how to build a structure, how to sharpen a knife, what kind of pistols and guns if you want, all these things. A tremendous amount. What are they looking at that? No. They go to the clickbait fear porn because it's like they're hoping that they're eventually going to find something that is so convincing that they can get their family to stop humiliating them long enough that they can do something to help their family, which is, that's peeing up a rope. That's it. Not going to happen. It's going to be the ones that just do what they're going to do and go out and do it. For me, I looked at Reno. The problem with Reno I'm seeing is the influx. Californication is actually getting pretty bad across the country. You have a lot of baby boomers, my generation. And for you millennials, you have a right to be mad. My generation really sucks. There's a bunch of good people in my generation, but most of them their motto is, I got mine, you get yours. They're nihilists. And so they're in the heated market. They're selling off their frame houses that they bought for $30,000 or $40,000 for, $1 million or whatever, taking the equity in cash and going to places like Whitefish, Montana, or Asheville, North Carolina, and other places, and they're just buying properties like crazy. They're doing it here in Reno. And what they do is they come in, they distort the real estate market and create artificial bubbles. They're not bringing in mortgage-paying jobs. That's the problem. So they inflate the local economies, which means housing costs go up dramatically. Here in Reno, in 5 years, housing prices have nearly doubled. So have rentals. And there's no mortgage-paying jobs to make out the difference. So you see in these areas that are impacted, where folks that were native to the area, grew up there, have had to move out because they can't swing the cost of living. Sure, these baby boomers come in and they bring some jobs, but those are low-paying service jobs because they like their hamburgers and having their cars washed and their nails done and whatnot. But these are not mortgage-paying jobs, especially in an overinflated market. When things get really bad, it'll blow back for the California people because you have folks that have grown up in a place, and you have families where some members have homes, and they're in a situation where they were situated before it happened, the Californication hit, but then they have family members that are renting for any number of reasons, and they're blown out of the market. So they wind up having to go to some place like Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in the middle of the Rust Belt so they can get a job and affordable rents. But when things start going sideways, those people are going to start going back home. And these communities are going to be incredibly hard-pressed. Governments and police there are going to be hard-pressed. There's going to be a huge amount of anger. People are going to start understanding they have been set up to fail, and they're going to die as a result. They're going to be angry about that. And so what will happen? They're going to go into neighborhoods and they'll find somebody who's lived there all their lives, and they'll see a bunch of people coming up, carrying baseball bats, knives, guns, whatever. They're looking, and they'll just point across the street and they go, there, California. Right. California. And once they do that, there will be blood. So these people are coming in. I got mine, you get yours. They don't care what they're doing to hurt other people, to break up families because they're causing craziness in the markets. They're just into themselves, and now they're going to be begging and kneeling, and no one's going to have sympathy for them. It's going to be very, very bad for these people. It's going to be very, very bad. It's going to be bad for everybody. But for the ones that are just getting out of California, not because of Planet X or anything else, they're just getting out because they can take the money and run before the real estate market bubble breaks in California. And that could happen sooner than later. If right now we have a lot of instability, that our nation is on the verge of a civil war, and I think that this actually is coming out of the BRICS. BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, particularly for Russia and China, what they want to do is dethrone the dollar as the reserve currency of the world. And they came incredibly close to it. They were that close to throwing the dollar. And then Trump came in and boom, he turned that around. We have a booming economy now, which means they went from there to like so, not so easy for them to do it. So if they can create a situation where some crazy idiot is provoked into assassinating the president, or they can destroy the ability of the president to rule, to govern the country through just huge amounts of witch hunting or whatever it is that he wants to call it. But the bottom line is, if they're successful in doing that because they want to gain power, they're going to play into the hands of the BRICS. The BRICS are then going to exercise their ability once they come within striking distance. The dollar will be dethroned as the reserve currency of the world, and then guess what? We have, we go Venezuela, baby. All right, the dollar winds up becoming a third world currency, which means, these $1 million houses in California, that's going to collapse. So the baby boomer generation, they're seeing things. They don't perhaps see them in that, but they can see enough that they can sense, time to leave the party while everyone's laughing. So these are the things that I see happening. I've done a lot of, in the last 5 years, I've done reconnaissance on the ground, boots on the ground in 5 different states, looking for potential relocation sites for a church. I have Knowledge Mountain Church of Perpetual Genesis. And I do that for people who are in awareness and they're tired of being ridiculed and they'd like to talk with like-minded others. They can continue being what they're doing, but it's just a way that's spiritually based for us to get together, and without the humiliation that comes from, go into any mainstream church and say, hey, do we have a Planet X study group? And you may wind up getting kicked out of the church.
Right.
So I see all these things happening. I see the ones that are making the right moves, going into preparedness, not necessarily because of Planet X, but they're seeing all of the other things that are going on. Those are the people, I think, that are going to have the strong chance of doing it. Churches are going to be very instrumental. Churches that have the right kind of leadership. Churches have three things that are really advantageous versus for-profit firms. The first thing is, when it comes to a disaster, they can respond very quickly. It could take them 30 years to build a library, but in 3 days after a disaster, they're out there serving the community. Then you have an established chain of command. Yeah, everything's political, but you're going to have a church where there is an established chain of command, and people will respect that, because without an established chain of command, you go into chaos, anarchy, and the whole thing tears apart and goes. It's interesting. Over the years, I've seen secular groups, survival groups, and they are very effective at getting their bunkers, their supplies, their weapons, and everything, and then they implode, and that's it. Everything goes to waste. And they implode because what happens is, in the absence of a clear and present danger, now you have people that are going the ego route. And there's the common problem with a lot of people in survival situations. They'll tell you, hey, I don't know how to do this, but I know I have to be the boss.
Right.
And they'll do that. So they collapse and fail. And then the third thing churches have is they have a very good diversity of backgrounds. You go into for-profit business, it's going to follow the business model. So you're going to have a very narrow set of job skills going in there, whereas with the church, you go to pray on Sunday, to your left is a doctor, to your right is a nurse, ahead of you, sanitation worker, behind you, some guy that owns a tire store. They have hobbies, they farm, hobby farm, or they garden, hunting, fishing, two-way radio, amateur communications. They're going to come in with a wide range of skills and hobbies that are going to be directly relevant. I mean, it's you could have a grandmother who is really, really superb at growing medicinal herbs and preparing tinctures and poultices and other things. And that's, what? She goes to Walmart and offers those services. They're going to go, no, thank you. Form letter, get lost.
Right.
We want a stalker. That's it. You know how to read stocking labels.
Yeah.
But in a disaster, in a global tribulation, that woman is going to have valuable information that's going to keep people alive. So the measure of things, it's as I often say, surviving a tribulation is less about what you have and more about what you know.
I would definitely.
That's really important. And that's why I try and get people to do the preparedness. I'm not saying race out and go to Costco and buy $10,000 worth of stuff and max out your card. What I'm saying is, you start thinking about things, doing things constructive, looking for solutions. Because when you do that, your brain is this amazing wetware computer. And so you're programming it with new information. A good example of that was the 2004 superquake and tsunami that struck in December of that year, and 250,000 people died.
Yeah.
Now, the interesting thing is who did all the dying? Okay. That's not really reported. I'll tell you who didn't die. Natives living on the island, actually closest to the epicenter.
Yeah.
And everywhere else,
Right.
and wild animal. The people that did all the dying had the cars, the money, the education, the jobs. They were clever and smarter than the rest. So why did they do all the dying? Well, natives are sitting around the campfires and they're telling folklore and they're going, when the big turtle that we live on starts to shake, you got to get to the top of the shell. Doesn't matter what. So the earthquake starts and their folklore, which has been reinforced continually, and everybody is able to act autonomously. They don't need anybody to tell them what to do. And they immediately are running uphill, screaming, feet don't fail me now. Then you have all of the wild animals. They instinctively understand what it is. They go to high ground. Domesticated animals are going to stay in their pens or they're going to be tethered. And the educated, intelligent people are the ones that are going to sit there and go, well, Harry, look at that. All the water went out and those fish are stranded. Let's get a basket and we're going to have free fresh fish. Sushi, baby. Let's go get it. And, you know, that's what will happen. They don't know any better. Or they'll just stand there watching a wall of water coming up a street, and they're just dumbstruck. They're looking at it, and their brains cannot process it. They can't. They don't know what to do with it. You know, a good case point is when Columbus came to the New World. When the natives first saw the ships, they were it was such a bizarre sight for them, they couldn't see the ships. They couldn't mentally wrap their heads around it. So you have to be prepared. And so what is preparedness? All right, let's imagine you go to the bank, do a little business. Next thing you know, there's a bunch of hoods come in and they're robbing the bank, and you got some 18-year-old kid who's nervous with a 9 milli right up here. Okay, and you're a hostage, and you got this kid shaking, and the 9 mil's right here. Okay, and out of the corner of your eye, you see on the top of a building across the street is a SWAT team sniper with a rifle. Now, if that SWAT team member on there that's sitting there with that rifle is preparing for this event like 99.99% of the people that are listening to this show right now. Okay? Let's talk about your viewers. Let's get personal. If you're the sniper up on the building, how prepared are you? You're going to be going, sniper on the building. Hey, I just started this. My uncle got me the job. Kind of curious, but on these bullets, which way does the pointy end go? Okay? Now, that's exactly how people are preparing for the tribulation today.
Yeah.
But in reality, what happens? That SWAT team sniper has been years of practice, going to the range, thousands of rounds, competitions, and everything is completely muscle memory. Once the command is given, execute, that sniper has already got the bad guy in the crosshairs, very specifically aiming for the right at the base of the skull so that they can hit what's called the apricot. That's the medulla oblongata. Put a bullet through the medulla oblongata, you're dead before you even know you're dead. So you're sitting there with a 9 mil like this, and that SWAT team memory takes care of it. And next thing you know, this kid that's got just melts away and falls to the floor. Like a rag doll. That's it.
Right.
Because he's already had a 308 or whatever it is go slamming right through his medulla oblongata, and he's dead before he even knew he was dead, let alone could decide to pull a trigger or not.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, most people, they're not going to prep. They don't even prep for big storms and hurricanes anymore. Why prep for anything that they don't think is going to happen, or they think it's some big conspiracy theory?
Exactly. And they think that way because that is what they're being trained to think. If we went back to the 1800s, to our pioneering forefathers and mothers who literally endured great hazards to go across the country, like I said, looking at the west end of an east end, or at the east end of a westbound oxen for a whole year. God, that's got to be brutal. They did it, and it was very, very low tech. They didn't need all the fancy technology to survive, but they had the knowledge of how to survive. And also what was important is that they had the numbers. You know, today, what I see with preppers is, and it was ridiculous. I remember when History Channel came out with the preppers, and oh my God, I must have had 20 calls from producers wanting me to, help them with the project and join, and I just said, no, I'm not interested. I mean, the first rule of prepping is, you don't tell anybody what you're doing.
Yeah.
All right. So I don't know where you're finding these morons who are, have 10 flat mouths, but they're dumb as a rock, as a sack of hammers.
Yeah.
And they keep calling me. And finally, I got mad at one producer and I said, no, I'm not going to wear a hula skirt and scratch myself on camera for the benefit of your advertisers. They got the point. I wasn't interested anymore. But you get, people say me and mine, my family, couple of friends, 7, 8, 9, 10 people. That's it. This is the extent of my preparations. I got news for you. You're not going to do well.
Yeah.
You don't have numbers.
We got a few minutes left. I thought maybe for the last few minutes you might tell people a few safe locations that they might want to head towards.
Well, you want to stay away from nukes. You want to stay away from fracking fields. You want to get off the coastlines. As a rule, I'd say about 150 miles in, ideally about 2,000 feet of elevation. And when you find it, you want 3 things, in particular, soft earth, rolling hills, and a lot of water. And that's a problem for the West. In the West, there is a lot of water if you have a lot of money. In the East, it's much easier. But if you're along the coastlines, you're not going to do well. And that's where the greatest amount of resistance to preparation, you find it. Those are the most vocal deniers, are the ones that are the most at risk.
Right. Yeah, and I myself am on
flyover states, people are more sensible.
Yeah, and I myself am on a coastline, and I fear that eventually I'm going to have to move more inland. I'm in South Louisiana near the Gulf Coast.
Well, God, I envy you the crawfish and the oysters.
Oh yeah, great food.
I miss that. I lived in Texas for 10 years, Houston for 5. Oh, I miss the oysters. But you need to get north of there, way north of there. Also, if you look at the maps, it is a consistent theme that the New Madrid is going to split and create a new inland sea, which means you're going to be seabed property in Louisiana.
That's what I hear.
How long can you tread water?
Yeah.
So, but the point is that you know all of this. What are you going to do?
Yeah, exactly.
What are you prepared to do about it? Me, I'm leaving Reno and I'm relocating again to an even better place. And I keep doing it. And I don't care what you think. period. You know, keep your nonsense, keep your arrogance and your hubris to yourselves. And, you know, what really disgusts me are the people that, well, if it happens, I want to be at ground zero so I can die quickly. Really? I'd like to see them at ground zero when it happens and say, you know, you said you wanted to die this way. Why are you yelling and screaming and throwing children and women out of the way so you can get up the stairs?
Right.
You know, so that hubris doesn't buy anything with me. But if you're going to do something, do it. You're not going to do it, you're going to know why you die. And when you do die during a tribulation, you're going to die badly.
Yeah.
The best you can do is for a quick death. Because if it's not a quick death, you're going to starve to death, you're going to, or you're going to get a communicable disease, which those are going to spread like crazy. These are all slow, miserable ways to die. Your medication runs out. So these are the things that, if you're going to do it, I'd say the best way to prepare, just get yourself a pistol. That way, when you know you're dying and you're going to die badly, you can cut it short for you and your loved ones. Eat a bullet. And, hey, it's the life you chose.
Right. Well, you know, let's hope that people will, you know, start getting their, you know, start with a little bit at a time. You have to start somewhere, you know, start getting some stuff together, making little preparations here and there. You know, my family's been stockpiling water for years. People think we're crazy, but, you know, it's something that we've been doing that I feel that it's going to help us, you know?
Yeah. Well, guess what? When things go sideways, they're going to show up at the door. And instead of them thinking that you're crazy, it's going to be worse. They're going to think that you are a dirty, filthy hoarder that's not sharing because you're inhumane. And then they're going to say, well, this is an evil person, so we kill them and take what they have.
Yeah, it's going to get crazy.
So if you're doing anything, for God's sakes, don't tell anybody about it. Just do it.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you do talk about it, talk it, you know, in general terms. But if your neighbors know, when things go sideways, that's it. You could, they're going to be desperate. And people who are fighting for their lives and they're terrified are violent and pathological liars. That's what's going to happen. That's the reason why, if you're in awareness, you're going to relocate to an area where you're not going to be in a heavy population density. You'll be out in a country area where people are used to taking care of themselves and they're used to being good neighbors and pulling together and dealing through things. Any community that cannot afford a full-time fire department and everybody has to volunteer, that's the kind of community you want to look for.
Yeah.
Those are people that know how to pull together and help one another. And these are the common sense things. And but like I said, you know, if you're busy being subdued by ridicule, what are you going to do? Fear porn on YouTube.
Exactly. And Marshall, I want to thank you so much for joining us. Take these last few minutes to talk about anything you got upcoming, anything interesting going on with you.
Well, next month I am bringing out in September Radio Free Earth. And this is a checklist item. If you are into preparedness, this is something you want to have because it's going to show you how to do two-way communications, how to find the right equipment, how to find the right people, how to organize it. It's written more as a leadership guide. So if you have this, this is where you start. In 2 days' time of reading the book, which is a large book, it's the equivalent of maybe 2 to 4 years of personal research. So it's a very, very good, it's immersion program, takes you into a complete, total solution. And this is, I'm bringing this out in September, but also in September, I'm starting work on my next preparedness title, which will be Win-Win Dome Communities. And this is about building all hazards communities, not as shelters, but actually you create a permanent way of life, a new way of life that'll sustain through the tribulation and in the reestablishing years follow that. So that's where I'm at right now. That's what I'm doing, and I'm having a ball.
Awesome. We'll be definitely looking forward to all that. Marshall, I want to thank you again for joining us, and we will definitely have you back after that comes out. And I hope you have a great night.
Same to you.
All right,
Cheers.
we'll talk to you later.
Okay.
Bye-bye.